Doug Gladstone, author of the book A Bitter Cup of Coffee. Hey, Doug, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Yourself? How are you today?
Doing very well, thank you. Now, we're here with Laurent Prophet. I'm Dave Zirin, Sirius XM Edge of Sports Radio. Now, Doug, first the news hot off the press here is that, according to league sources, there could be a deal in place to finally do right by the more than 800 former big league players so they can get pension benefits. Is this correct or not correct?
This is very correct. In fact, to be very candid, I'm the one who sort of leaked the information to a few journalists, yourself included.
Well,
and
Doug, you officially are not a leaker if you now say it. That's like saying, how you doing? Deep throat. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, yeah. Technical point, but very valid. Very valid.
We're talking to the source, the unnamed source.
Yes.
We're finally finding the unnamed source.
So, Doug, break it down for us. Why, for you, has it been so important to go about this mission to make sure that these players get their benefits that they're due?
Gee, that's a good question. You know, I don't want to be too hokey, but I grew up as a child of the television generation, and I remember Richard Kimball, the character in The Fugitive, and he was falsely accused of murdering his wife. And the only thing he ever wanted was to tip the scales of justice back into a level playing field. And growing up, these guys gave me hours upon hours of entertainment and enjoyment, and I just felt it was sort of a responsibility on my part to try to help them, to try to tip the scales of justice so that they could receive a little bit of compensation for their credit, for their contributions to the national pastime.
Well, what has possibly been Major League Baseball's justification for denying benefits to these hundreds and hundreds of players?
Oh, very simply, they don't have to do anything. Legally, they do not have to do anything for an inactive, non-vested ball player who's not part of the pension fund. And you may not know, but in terms of the players' union's responsibility, once they're a retiree, they are not due what is called the duty of fair representation, i.e., they don't owe them the benefit of legal counsel. So neither the union nor the league, and I acknowledge this, going very upfront. They don't have to do anything morally. However, I find their position indefensible. These are the men who pave the path so that someone like a Matt Holliday, I'm just being arbitrary, can command a $120 million 7-year contract, or Ryan Howard can command a 5-year extension at $25 million, or A-Rod can command $27.5 million. And by the way, I'm not begrudging them their money. It's what the market can bear. They can get it. Hey, Godspeed. Go for it. But have a little healthy respect for the players who paved the path, who often went out on strike years before you, so you can command these, what some people would call outrageously obscene salaries.
So let's stay on the news cycle with this, Doug. If Major League Baseball is under no obligation to pay these pensions, and the union is under no legal obligation to provide them representation, what broke the logjam that allowed this breakthrough to take place, where it looks like they're finally going to get what's due to them?
Well, I don't want to sound self-absorbed, and a lot of people have said that this book has been the catalyst, it's been the driving force. I don't want to go that far, because there have been a lot of talented people who have been working behind the scenes, men like David Clyde, the former flamethrower.
He was the phenom from the early 70s. Wasn't he on the cover of Sports Illustrated?
Yep, he would have been his generation Steven Strasburg. Men like Craig Skoke, some of the members of the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association have tried to deal with this condition for over 30 years. And what I have often scratched my head about is why members of the media, excluding yourself, obviously, haven't picked up on this issue. There have been a few. The talented Pulitzer Prize winner from the New York Times, Dave Ant, wrote a great column about this in October of 2003. But by and large, no one's reported about this. And I've been at author events all around the country. I've had a 12, 13 state book tour where literally, not to get melodramatic, but I talk to people and their jaws are agape. They're in disbelief. They don't understand how senior citizens, and forget that they're ball players. Senior citizens, retirees, are being hosed like this. And I just think it's a travesty and an injustice. And in some small way, I just tried to help out.
We're here talking with Doug Gladstone, the author of A Bitter Cup of Coffee, the story of how over 800 former big league ball players who played between 1946 and 1980 were denied their pensions by Major League Baseball. Go for it, Laurent.
Yeah, I'm sitting there listening. I just wonder how this affects the black players that played in the Negro leagues.
That's a great question. And let me tell you, for the benefit of yourself and your listeners, the veterans of the Negro Leagues were given charitable contributions. They're not really called pensions. They're called life annuities in January of 1997, maybe to, in part, commemorate the 50th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier. And you needed a combination of 4 years service time in either MLB or the Negro League.
Okay.
Now, believe it or not, I know of at least one guy, a talented ball player who could have gone on to star with the Harlem Globetrotters, it's my understanding, here in Albany, New York, named Billy Harrell. He's a top-flight athlete for Siena. He was an All-American for Siena. And like I said, he could have played with the Globetrotters. He had, all told, with the Red Sox and the Cleveland Indians, 2.25 years of service credit. And then he had a year playing for Michael Jordan's old team, the Birmingham Black Barons, the predecessor of the team that Jordan played for.
Right.
So all told, this guy is getting hosed twice. He doesn't get a pension from Major League Baseball in the traditional way, and he doesn't have the 4 years necessary to earn his way on as a veteran of the Negro Leagues. So it's a double unseemly travesty for a man like Billy Harrell.
That's fascinating. They were talking to Doug Gladstone, author of A Bitter Cup of Coffee. Now, Doug, a lot of people are going to listen to this and think, mistakenly, but they will think that, well, wait a minute, if you're playing any kind of Major League ball, you're going to make some money. How have these players who weren't able to get their pensions in the 50s, 60s, 70s, has your experience, your research shown that they've suffered by being denied this?
A lot of these men, not to get too melodramatic, they've been homeless. They couldn't pay, for hip replacements. Their homes have been foreclosed. One of them, most notably, he was Baseball Digest's All-Star Rookie Selection back in the 70s, a fellow by the name of Mike Colburn. Again, he's been homeless on 2 occasions. There's a fellow former Yankee player named Ken Wright. Ken Wright is a man of 65. He currently has to hold down 2 jobs in Pensacola, Florida, one for the Warrington Relief Center and one as a courier at a hospital. There's a guy, Bill Burback, again, a former Yankee. His wife is a bank executive in Tennessee, and she has to keep working. She's 2 years older than her spouse because he's got that condition, cardiopulmonary obstructive disorder. He has no health insurance. Bill McNulty out in Sacramento, no health insurance. And even though I'm elated that Major League Baseball apparently and the union apparently are on the cusp of doing right by these men, it's important to say this. These payments will not include health insurance, and they certainly aren't going to include spousal payments to designated beneficiaries to your loved ones. So they're really not, strictly speaking, a true pension.
Yeah.
They're better than nothing, but I want to make it clear that some of these men, the Bill McNultys of the world, the Tom Brunos of the world, who runs I don't know if either of you gentlemen have had the opportunity to go out in Pierre or the Black Hills of South Dakota. He runs this great